Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to a special episode of Tower Casuals, a midweek episode, bonus episode, talking all about the Vow of the Disciple raid. I am your host, Josh, and joining me tonight is the Iron Lord, Yeetus Deletus himself, the wielder of Lubare's ruin, A1 Johnny.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, John is filling in for us very, 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 very last minute, I might add. The guests that we had slated to appear, Colonel Panic and Nerd Generalist, both had some family things come up tonight. So, John, thank you so much for jumping in right after you got off work. I messaged him maybe 3 hours ago, and of course, his response was immediately yes, of course. So, here's what we're going to do tonight, everyone. We're going to break down all the we're going to break down the encounters. We're going to give overall impressions of the raid. We're going to talk about the suite of raid weapons. We're going to talk about collective obligation, the exotic that John managed to get, and then we're going to rank the overall Destiny 2 raids. Where does this fit in for us in the grander scheme of things? And when I say Destiny 2 raids, that of course does mean raids in Destiny 2. We are going to omit Vault of Glass. Vault of Glass is a reprised raid. So we are going to omit Vogue. So sorry, Vogue. I'm partially omitting it for myself so that I'm not held back by nostalgic feelings.
Atheon's down bad
Because
today, it seems.
Atheon's down bad, but raids have just, as we talked about in our raid episode, God, if you've been with us this long, about 15, 16 months ago when we ranked the raids, Vogue tends to have a lot of nostalgic feelings behind it. But it was really, there was this sense when you walked into Vogue that it was unlike anything you'd ever experienced before. I had that same feeling stepping into the pyramid in Vow of the Disciple. You get through this swamp area, right? And I mean, listen, it was a bit of a slog for everyone. Everyone's getting anteatered left and right. Our team somehow was totally immune to that. I don't know how. We were totally immune to it. I wish that a more competent team would have gotten our luck.
Yeah, I was about to say our day one clear wasn't missed because of errors. Unfortunately, we're just
our day one clear was missed because of a fucking guy named the Caretaker. You get to this swampy area and you're like, okay, this is more of what we have in the Light Blade Strike. I don't know how I really feel about this. Not really digging it. Of course, you enter through the Misama area, and then you step into the pyramid, and it's unlike anything you've experienced in the game before. It's totally different than the European or Moon pyramids, and it kind of gives you this feeling that every single pyramid is totally different. And you look at the outside of these things, you're like, how big are they really inside? This really gives you a sense of the scope. You jump down this big chasm. You're seeing this dissected worm, by the way. You jump into this chasm, and then you walk out. You kind of walk out of the opening room, and you get a sense of just how gigantic this fucking place is. And you're gonna go all the way off in the distance. You see this gigantic glowing block with like this red lightning around it, and there's a worm god underneath it with its mouth open. And the lore behind it is
one of the coolest just set pieces.
Like, I mean, God, I cannot give enough praise to the art team, to the design team on the overall feel of this raid. I feel like this, not every raid we can say raises the bar for the game. But this, I feel, in terms of mechanics, it's the most mechanically sound since Last Wish. And I think it's probably the best. It's easily the best design since, I mean, we've only had one raid. But it's definitely the best designed raid since Garden of Salvation. It's like the feeling of dread you have throughout this whole thing is just masterfully done.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you never know what's going to pop out.
This team just doesn't miss, man.
No, they don't miss. And I mean, we noted that some of the raid team had been moved over to craft the legendary campaign. Not just the legendary, but the craft the campaign. And it's evident when you play that campaign that this team clearly had influence on it. In fact, one of the raid leads is now the campaign lead. He was the campaign lead on the the Witch Queen. He's the campaign lead for Lightfall going forward. I feel so bad that I'm just totally blanking on a name right now. If I
Was it
remember it,
Hops?
we'll come back to it. Yes, Andrew Hops.
Okay.
Andrew Hops
Yeah.
is the campaign lead for the Witch Queen. He will be the lead for Lightfall. And
Well deserved.
we talked about the campaign. Yeah, what very well deserved. I mean, and remember, Joe Blackburn, the game director, came from raids. Luke Smith came from raids. Like, there's a recurring theme here, right? And we see what happens when Bungie has the resources for these end game PVE moments. The mechanics in this raid never feel punishing, though. They're difficult, but they don't feel punishing. They feel just challenging enough until you learn them, and then you're like, it's like every other raid with the exception of Garden of Salvation. It's like, oh, it comes down to timing and execution. And
memorizing
this raid
39 symbols.
God, dude, I swear. So Today in Destiny has a flashcard feature for this now, and it's actually really funny.
No way.
But all of us trying to come up with names because we didn't have the Bungie names that they provided us. There's a big wish wall when you're headed to the first encounter, and of course that will probably unlock some sort of mechanic once people play with it more. But there are names for each of the symbols, and we didn't quite know those. There's one that is supposed to be Black Garden, and we definitely kept calling, or at least I kept calling it Utah. Because if you've ever been to the American Southwest, it looks like a fucking
silhouette.
Mesa. If you've ever, I find it funny that I'm calling it Utah. The more apt comparison is probably North Arizona. But when I said it when I said Utah, American Southwest, I was just throwing all these names out. Our buddy Phil was just cracking up because John and Phil grew up in Arizona, so and I'm from Texas. It was very funny to us. I think that our guys who live up in Pennsylvania were like, "What the fuck? What are you guys even talking about?" But you go through these encounters, and the arenas feel large for once in some of these encounters. But there is one encounter that feels so claustrophobic as you're working your way through, and you get to the third encounter. You get to Exhibition, and you have to juggle 3 different relics in this fucking encounter. We'll break down the encounter here in a minute, but the very end room is like the most claustrophobic I think I've ever felt in Destiny. Like, especially because you're building up stacks of darkness and slowly going blind. While
It's
Vault of
such a
Glass,
chaotic
and it's just
fight.
like, oh my god, it's a chaotic fight. It low ceilings in here, so not great for the Stompy wearing Hunter with triple jump on, who's trying to fervently heal. Everybody's calling for heals, and I'm just like running across the room repeatedly. I can't drop the relic to shoot off a super to help anybody. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. It's wild. And you're doing all this. There's jumping puzzles that are, and the jumping puzzles are so intuitive here. You have to send one person on ahead and another person be shooting the toggle for them until they get to a checkpoint area, and then all the platforms open for everybody else to follow. While this is happening, you have all these enemies spawning around you, and it doesn't matter. You wipe them all, they're all just going to spawn again.
Yep.
It's great. It kind of feels like eventually it'll be like a new Thrallway, probably. But I really enjoy the design of all this. And just when you think it can't get any better, you get to the final boss. You get to Rolk, who Oryx, I'm sorry, you've been voted off the island. You are no longer the biggest, most terrifying thing we've fought in Destiny.
Both in lore
This guy
and in just presentation, right? Like,
this guy is scarier than the Witness. The Witness looks like fucking Megamind. This guy looks like the robot, giant robot being that the Eternals talk to. That's what this dude's face reminded me of, especially when he got zoomed in on and you could see the symbols on his eyes. And one of them very much looks like one of the Hive symbols that we have grown so accustomed to seeing over the past couple of years. This guy is utterly terrifying. We said we didn't want boss stomps anymore, and Bungie went, okay, we're gonna do boss kicks. He's
my
gonna
man
kick.
did
He's
not
gonna kick
skip
the
leg
fuck out
day.
of you. He did not skip leg day. We all knew this going into it. We were all dodging around. We're all running around. Somebody was dead, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna run over and get them." Of course, as I sprint and slide over to them, this guy rushes at me with his glaive, and as I'm getting the res, I get fucking ragdolled across the room. Like my body just got punted. It was gone. My ghost was still there. My body just kept flying. I was back. I was spawned back, and my body was still flying.
Even on the first
It's
clear, when everything's tense and everyone's hungry for that W, it was still funny to see people get yeeted by this boss.
Oh my god, it's incredible. One of the absolute best clip, I think the best clip that sums it up came from Fallout Blazes Clear, and he was the one who got ragdolled in there. Like, there's like 3 people down. Fallout gets kicked, and Jay Overrated is with them, and he's just like he hits like a high pitched squeal laugh. It's an incredible clip. I encourage you to go find it. But that sums up. It's terrifying, but it's hilarious at the same time, right? It was funnier for us not being on contest mode when we got here. Like, spoilers, anteaters were not the reason we did not clear the raid on day one. It was that fucking caretaker.
What are you talking about, Josh? We kept getting kicked. Oh, too bad.
Oh
We
my
would have clutched it
god.
day one.
I mean, I kept getting, my guardian kept getting kicked in the balls, but it was by 2 taken wizards as soon as I would open up the door. This is just, it's wild. Like, the mechanics are probably the most, I would say, the most complex since Last Wish, but they're not complex in a way that's punishing. They're actually, once you start learning the symbols, it's actually not that bad. The first encounter. So let's start at the first encounter. We're gonna skip the opening. You can go. Everybody can go experience the opening for themselves in the mission that unlocked after World's First was completed. Go watch you a cool cutscene if you haven't, and then jump in and do that mission. Highly encourage going in with a fire team though, because it's tedious to do it by yourself. When you're in this first encounter, there's 9 doors here, and it's very much, it's a triangle. Ultimately, you can't really tell, but it feels like it's a triangle because there's the point that you come in at, there's another point off to the side, and then there's a third point, right? You exit through the base of the triangle. The amount of time we spent learning how to open these doors was absurd. I am almost ashamed to say how long it took us to figure out. We figured out the actual mechanic before figuring out how to open up the fucking
Yep,
doors.
we figured it all out, and then we're like, but how the fuck do we open
I
these
mean, because I
doors?
was starting to string them together. We would get like 2 in my rooms, and I was like, oh my god,
Yep,
we just need like 1 more. And we couldn't figure out how to open it. And when we finally figured it out, we felt so stupid.
yep.
We
I
put
just
it
remember while
together.
we were all having a couch, or a coaching moment of like, okay, what do we got to do? What are we missing? And I turn
Yeah,
around and see that little diamond that you shoot to start the encounter was still there, and I shoot it, and sure as shit, the door opens.
I had
I
done.
cannot believe.
I shit you not. I had done literally everything humanly possible in that room. I had shot every symbol. I had gone into every room that I could. I had killed every champion. I had killed every one of the orange bars. Like, there was nothing else to do. And then we see that the toggle is still there. Once you figured, I mean, on contest, nothing prepares you for contest mode in this game.
Yeah,
I think, as an aside, John and I have, I think, joined the chorus of players calling for contest to be a permanent addition to the game as a selectable difficulty.
absolutely.
I think Bife said it the best. His proposal was, okay, have the raid race. Anybody who wants to try and clear it has to load in the contest. But the second that the world's first happens, whether it's 12 hours or 24 hours, whenever world's first happens, contest mode, you get an in-game notification or something, or next time you wipe, you get a notification that says, hey, if you want to back out, you can load in on regular. You can load in on
Yeah,
regular and continue. Unlock normal mode right away, but anyone who clears it on contest that first 24 hours still gets the emblem. You have the regular emblem for everybody, and then contest mode selectable. Put something special in there. An emblem's not going to get most of us back in there, right? But
nope.
if you put some sort of special cosmetic in there, or guarantee the raid exotic out of it, maybe, I
Yeah.
think that would
Well,
be a way to do it.
I mean, weapon crafting as it launched is a whole other podcast, I feel. But
Mhm.
increase drop rates on those red borders. I mean, there's a lot they could do there.
There's a lot of things that you
Raid
can do.
mementos, you know.
Yeah. I mean, so we know raid mementos are coming. I suspect that'll be an addition that gets added with master mode when it gets introduced. But I would
I
say
know we're at least getting a sparrow in the master mode.
let's cut out at this point. I'm joining the chorus of saying let's cut out master mode and just make contest master because it literally is. Nothing is a bigger challenge in this game than saying you cleared a raid on contest mode. There is no bigger
Yeah,
brag. Soloing a dungeon, soloing a GM, okay, cool. Like those are fun little bragging rights. There's emblems for the dungeons and stuff. But clearing a raid on contest is a whole other animal, especially on one like this. I think at the end of the 24 hours, it was on pace to be like the second least cleared raid in D2 in the first 24 hours. Like there were 900 teams that had made it through, and I think one or
yeah.
two, like some, not just one or two, but a handful of those were repeat going through. The glads of the world, so to speak. Or Datto getting
I
footage for his guides.
I do wonder how that number was affected by people knowing they had a full 48. Like how many teams said, "Okay, let's get some sleep and hit it tomorrow."
We know, I know,
Knowing.
I know for a fact several of the people that we like to watch said that once they heard that news, they kept going at it. But most of them were at caretaker or at exhibition when they stopped. Almost
Hmm.
none of the teams that we know that quit and came back had hit the boss yet.
Yeah,
Um, and I think who was it? I want to say it was Fallout was talking about it, saying that letting us get a good night's sleep and come back energized, like, and knowing we had all day Sunday to work on this was just phenomenal. Um,
yeah. We experienced that just this weekend. I know it wasn't contest, but
yeah,
teaching new people the raid. Took us a couple hours to get through the third encounter. We kept slipping on the boss. We came back the next day and literally crushed him in 30 minutes. Like we had one goof and wiped, and then boom, killed him the next run.
yeah. And I think we experienced that with Deepstone also, right?
Yep.
I know the we were on separate teams during Deepstone, um, but almost everybody, even people we really respected, were getting hung up at A-Tracks. People were literally leaving the raid to go and get Lament and realizing that that was the play, and so they were grinding out the Lament quest during contest mode to get back in there and do it. Once you got past A-Tracks, boom, the rest of it was cake. It
Yeah.
was still hard, don't get me wrong, because of the snipers, but man, it is Atrax is still probably the roughest encounter.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to keep that trend going of
Mm-hmm.
having a early to mid DPS check to really test your might on contest.
So yeah, I want to talk DPS check here in a minute because I want to finish getting through this first encounter real fast. There's the three symbols you got to go through, and I thought it was really kind of ingenious that they split it into light and dark, and you have the symbols even correlate with light and dark side.
Yep.
That are on. It tells you where to go for go kill the key keeper. Essentially, these taken knights. You've got these unstoppable abominations spawning in, and you go into the room. You go into whatever room the second symbol is, and you have to kill a glyph keeper in there. And this is again the beginning of like a base thing for the entire rest of the raid, right? Like they've just been doing. And it all just flows. Like if you can't get that first room down, we saw the stats from the raid. There were like 600,000 people or something that loaded into the raid. A third of those, I think, cleared the first encounter on contest mode. Like most people were just giving up by the time they got to so a good chunk of those people didn't even make it into the raid, and I suspect because of anteater errors or some people who like more casual players who said fuck this, I'm done. Had that happened
Yeah,
to us,
getting
I probably would have had the same attitude if we had gotten bounced as much as some of these actual race
yeah,
teams.
especially with how the errors were working, where you would clear an encounter, someone would get booted, then when you load it back in, you had to do the whole encounter over.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
that's just a gut punch. But
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. There were a lot of issues, and we can basically sum it up to, if I remember correctly, this is the most they've ever had on day one of a raid ever by far
Yeah.
600,000, like five to 600,000 people isn't. I think the exact number. I'm misquoting when I say 600,000. I think the exact number is like 525,000. That is insane
That's
for the
that's
pinnacle
like a
activity
third
of
of
the game.
that's like a third of the concurrent player base, right? Like,
That
doesn't it
is
hover between like 1.5, 2 million?
if if Witch Queen, because we know Witch Queen hit a million pre-orders at the end of January. If it hit like let's say 1.2 million had bought it, that is almost half
Yeah.
of the player base attempted to play the raid on day one.
Yeah.
That is that's wild almost, and you have to own Witch Queen to go into the raid. So that's that's nuts. You're working your way through this encounter, and when you get into the next room, well, you talk DPS checks. DPS was not the problem for our team we were finding. It was all of the snipers and the ads. But this bastard has I can't 23 million health points.
Jesus, I didn't look up his official stats.
Atheon, for the record, has 12.5.
Jesus.
Okay, and
Well,
then
Josh, I'm proud of our team for showing up with that. At least we had no problems hitting max DPS on contest.
no, and when we would actually make it to the second or second floor and stuff and make it to the DPS, we had plenty of ammo. We had plenty of heavy. We all switched. Those of us who weren't running the galley all switched over to Outbreak, and I mean, John and I on the contest are over here doing 15K a hit. It was
Yep.
fantastic, but at a certain point, you can't you don't have enough reses, and there's too many snipers to deal with. And it's like, okay, you have to be on snipe duty, but you also have to run and you have to remember all the symbols, and you're still learning where everything is inside these rooms. God forbid you die, because then the symbols randomize on you. It's terrible, but I think this encounter is so cool the way that it does. The stun mechanic is fascinating to me on the
It
big
felt
building.
like the perfect Titan job. Like, that was my job. That entire room is you need to get right in this ogre's face and make
Yeah,
sure he doesn't climb the
we
staircase.
put Johnny and we put John and Joe on either side of the ogre, and they were doing an awesome job. They were stunning it so well that we would be done with the symbols and he wouldn't even be off his middle platform yet. So we just have to like all go hang out in the middle and clear ads and let him just stroll on over and hope he doesn't kill us. Um you do that. We had our two warlocks stationed on either side of the obelisk, helping us shoot and just continually dropping rifts or wells for myself and our other runner to heal in. And God, that's the way to go. I mean, I'd come out, I'd take some pot shots with Outbreak at some of the snipers, especially off contest, and just boom, they're dropping like 3 bursts, they're down.
Yep.
Um, those rooms get, as the outside becomes a little bit more open and you can kind of see things a little bit clearer, the inside becomes harder and harder and becomes more and more vertical. It's wild. You almost have to have stompies at a certain not even stompies, I would say you need to have like a double or triple jump though at a certain point, because I would be jumping and sprinting to the back of the room to get all the symbols I could see, and then on the way back I'd be like, oh shit, there's one up above. I'm gonna have to go. I already know I'm gonna have to get that one next. So let me go drop my symbols, get my pervading darkness on, then jump back in there and grab that last one that I saw that I know only I can get up to in a quick amount of time. You get through this. And I love his final stands so much.
Yeah.
Where you have 3 plates again. You do your DPS on these plates, and like, oh, it's like Callus, right? Like, you're empowered, and then it goes away, and so you have to move, and you can only do damage on the plate, which is a problem for us hunters using Mobius Quiver, because they do exactly what they're doing. There's fucking pillars in the way, but you can't
You
jump
could
up
hear.
above them because you're too far away. John can't yeet them.
Yep, had to learn that the hard way.
It's rough. It's a tough look. And as you're advancing in this final room and he's doing his final stand, you're walking closer to him as he's getting closer to you. And it's just like, I really don't want to get to that third plate. But that's where the outbreaks just kind of, all of a sudden, you're just hearing 5 outbreaks going, and because there's
Seam of particles everywhere.
so many of us are dumping in. It's like 15, 20, 30K like all at once. It's just absolutely wild. Everything hitting is doing damage too. Like every single little SIVA particle. There's all these numbers. I'm just like, oh god, please don't crash. Please don't crash. Please don't crash. Uh you go from there into into the awesome jumping puzzle I described. Getting to the secret chest is a trip, and I really really like getting to the secret chest. I think that's a lot of fun. And then you enter Exhibition, which may just be one of the best designed encounters of all time in a Destiny raid. It's by
Wh-
far one of the most infuriating.
When I saw the stupid little rock laser from Leviathan at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, I thought that was so fucking cool. And then they give us the Vogue relic and the Eye of Riven, and it ties into the whole thing about this guy being like a collector, right? Of like
Yep.
taking tokens from different species and civilizations, and it's just chef's kiss, chef's fucking kiss.
It's crazy. You know, you pick up that relic, and it's like, okay, well, that's interesting. Then you open the next door, and you match your symbols up. You're like, okay, you open up the next door, and there's a second relic here. That's a problem. And you realize that it's the Aegis shield. So you're picking that up, and you're like, okay, like I was like, I'll run it in here. I like running Relic and Vogue. I'll run it here. You get through that. Second room gets a little chaotic, you know. And then
There's some stuff going on.
you realize only people with relics can read some of the symbols, and vice versa. Then you get to the third room, and this is usually where it all just goes to hell. The third room is massive. It's fucking huge. It's wide. It's wide and it's vertical. So if you have the shield, congratulations. You're trying to dash across as quickly as humanly possible to heal everybody. You are just constantly moving, but you're beating the shit out of everything in between you too. There are taken night spawning that have to be dropped to extend your timer. We're trying to extinguish taken rifts now with the Eye of Riven because there's so many taken spawning in now. And you're like, okay, is that the end? Is that the end? My
If you
friends,
don't die by all the screebs
oh
waiting
my
behind
god,
you
dude, the screen. So
in the door.
the screams going into the third break room in between second and third rooms are easy to avoid. It's just like, oh, okay. When you go into the fourth break room, they're right there. The second you open that door, and it's just like, oh god, clear or jump high.
Yeah,
And
as everyone's panicking, we've got 10
I
seconds on the
don't.
clock.
Yeah,
You
I
can
mean,
at this for an hour.
you have no time. I don't think anything was making John more nervous than me and Phil basically screaming "Nobody lives forever" and jumping over everything. Keep in mind, I'm not able to go invisible while holding the relic. And that's the final plot twist, right? Is you can't just run the same relic through all five rooms. You have to
Nor can
constantly
you
be
pick it
switching
up,
off.
do something, and or nor can you drop it, do
Yeah,
something, and pick it up again like you can. Once you drop that thing, you've got like a what is it, a 30-second debuff that won't let you pick
something
it up
like
again.
that. Yeah, something like that.
Yep.
It was absolutely wild. You have a little bit of time to kind of catch your breath in these break rooms. The fourth room, I've never had a feeling of claustrophobia. I got it here because the ceilings are so low. It's so you can bounce off of them. If you're a warlock, I can't tell you the amount of times I saw a warlock just glide off the edge to their death because they couldn't grab the ledge. There's a couple big floating platforms in the middle, and there's two big rooms on the left and right side, and then there's just this gigantic open area in the back with I can't even tell you how many. I all I can describe it as is a metric fuck ton of enemies in the back.
That's appropriate. That's appropriate.
And if you have somehow made it this far, let me tell you something. The mechanics in this room are actually easier than in the third room because it's a smaller room overall, but there is just so much shit happening. There is nowhere that you can hide, that you can heal. I am over here with the shield while people are screaming for cleanse me, and I'm trying to kill glyph keepers with just the shield because of that thing's a pretty badass melee weapon on top of that, and the super was just
It's
yeeting.
basically the Titan super, right?
I was just yeeting glyph keepers off the side of the map. to save us some time, and but running around being like, I got taken bubbles over here. Follow me. I'll cleanse as we go. Let's go. And like somebody would call, I'm dead. I didn't get cleansed. It's fine. We're leaving you. We're out of res tokens. As long as 3 of us make it, we're okay. Just the complete pandemonium. You get in there, of course, a whole army of screebs as you go in to dunk these one last time. And you're like, okay, thank God. Nothing can possibly be worse than that. It gets worse. You finish exhibition and you go to Dominion, which the entrance to Dominion is one of the coolest things. You jump down a very long distance onto the arena where you're going to fight Rourke, who has been like shit talking you the entire raid, by the way.
Oh yeah,
Basically
just
calling
talking
you
absolute trash.
basically calling you like a parasite, and like you just won't die. And so you get down there, and this guy, the entire fight is him fucking with you. This guy is not scared. Even when you damage him, he's not scared. He's just like, oh, okay, I'm going to actually try now because they've been shooting at me. They broke through a little bit of my shield. I'm going to actually try to kill them now.
I'm gonna actually pick up my weapon, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I'll use my weapon more than just like swiping at you. And it's combining everything, right? You're dunking things. Only certain people can see certain things and call out. This is actually really mechanically easy. In all frankness, for a final boss fight, I'm shocked at how
they
easy the
they
mechanics were.
Yeah, I think they did an awesome job of setting up the. I mean, I know they do this in every raid, but I think they did it here better than they have in other raids of making you learn those till they're muscle memory. So by the
Yep.
time you get to the boss, really the only new thing is trading that buff, right? Of
Yeah,
shooting
and I mean
the.
the buff. I mean, so you can definitely do it with more than you can have 2 people running at once if you're going for a speed run,
Yeah,
but otherwise, why chance it? Just take a little bit longer and do it.
yeah,
When you get up to the boss, I will say when you finally are basically granted his presence and you can walk up onto the actual boss floor, you get the impression that's probably where the dude's throne is, right? You get up there and there's 4 corners and there's again fucking symbols, but everything is like very constrained and there's shadow throw coming at you. There's this dude charging at you. Um, and you're trying not to accidentally shoot the staff because you don't want to become the one empowered. But you also don't want to get hit by his attack because pervading darkness. Um,
you also don't want to get kicked.
you also don't want to get kicked. You don't want to get ragdolled like me. His attacks can also push you off, and Godspeed if you're a warlock and you get pushed off, you're done. There is no saving that. There is no recovering that. I saw a hilarious video. Somebody was the last person on his fire team alive. He jumped off the arena and floated around the back, and Rourke literally walked out on air and kicked him.
Yep, yep, I
And
know what you're talking
the
about.
community
Yeah.
managers responded with, "What the hell?" Like they were Damage was completely unaware this was a thing. Apparently,
Rolk doesn't give a fuck.
he really does not give a fuck. So you do this 3 times, and he goes into Final Stand. And Final Stand, canonically, Final Stand is the last 10% of his health. It is the only time he actually shows his full power, and he only shows us a glimpse of it because 10 seconds literally would have obliterated us. We are one of, for reference, we are probably like 3rd or 4th on the hierarchy chart of most powerful beings in the universe that we
Yeah.
know of. It's like it goes like the Witness, Rolk, and like us / Marasov, and then everybody else is below us, basically. We are treated like just again, we're just ragdolls to this guy. I can't tell
Yeah.
you the amount of
It
times when we're trying to
it
clear.
was
Go ahead.
it was like in Infinity War when, Black Widow and Falcon were trying to fight Thanos in a last stand. That's how little he cared about us for most of it.
Yeah, I very much felt. Uh, there were there were a few moments that I think we all felt like Steve Rogers fighting Thanos. I swear to God, we were so perfectly synergized at times that it was very much the gif of Tony and Pepper back to back shooting the chest lasers. That's
Yep.
very much how it felt at times. Just like, okay, we're backed into a corner. Here the guy comes. Let's kill all the Shadow Thrall and save each other. I keep saying we need to have two-person supers because I really wanted John to just throw me at the boss. I want to like just
Oh
generate a
God.
lightning spear and have him just hurl me, or like give me like this giant like give me my two spectral blades and let me just stab him into his eyes for like 200k. Just like how
Look,
glorious that would be.
they didn't add that little bit about Shahan like shooting his golden gun into the ground and giving everyone around him golden guns. They didn't write that in there if they're not planning on doing that in
I
Solo
mean,
3.0. I'm
if
just
if I'm able to do that instead of Celestial Nighthawk, I can't wait to do that. And basically be like, to me, my X-Men, and then do
yep,
that.
and make everyone's rockets golden guns. Like, come on.
Oh my dude, John, my reaction would be not safe for work. We would not be able to publish this on Spotify or on YouTube. I would have to contact my doctor. That's how intense this would get. But of course, you finally kill Roll, and the 10 seconds thing is not an exaggeration. It's literally the fastest final stand in Destiny history. You have 10
and
seconds to kill this guy, and you're
it
going
makes it
blind.
feel so good because yeah, you're glowing blind. Usually someone goes down. You see that like 6 seconds left on the timer. It feels so hectic. It's awesome. They nailed it.
It's awesome. Last night, everybody had used their supers. He had like a sliver of health, and I needed to reload my rocket. And of course, I've been on Divinity the whole encounter. I am the only one with any amount of heavy left. John's like, everybody's going down. John's like, just primary him, just primary him.
Outbreaks,
I got
outbreaks.
my dodge back at 8 seconds. Ticked down at 8 stacks of pervading darkness. So I got it off just before it would have taken my dodge away. Fired a rocket at 9, and at 10 it hit. And we got the clear. All of a sudden, just like everyone's like, no, because our screens went completely black, and then all of a sudden, boom, like it's pure light. There's an exotic Ingram in the air. This dude's a fucking tree. Um, it's absolutely wild. Like, and he's shit talking you the entire fight too. He's basically like, "Oh, yeah," like he said. I got the dialogue the other night. We got him all the way down, almost. We gave him like a cube of health left, right? Like
Yep,
right before final stand. 'Cause that's what you want to do. You just want to primary him in that third phase. Let him go to almost enrage. Primary him, and then fire all your supers just for the guaranteed kill. But
yep.
he goes, "Oh, you made me bleed a little." Like condescendingly, and I very much get like the impression of all that for a drop of blood. This guy's he's very much like Thanos in Infinity War, right? Like he thinks there's no way he can lose this and that. The only difference is we actually beat the shit out of him, right? Like we actually get the kill, and yet you get this unsettling feeling that he's not actually dead. Um, if he really is that powerful. But then again, let me turn this bastard into a gun, okay? Like it is a rule that if they are more powerful than me and I beat them, they get to become a gun.
Hey, this time they just skipped that and gave you his weapon,
So
right?
okay, well, let's talk the weapon suite for a minute. I I
Mm.
I love the weapon suite in this raid. First off, I love the design. This and the armor. The armor I think has varying pieces. I don't think anybody has a fully good set of it. The hunter helmet is fucking goofy. It has a smiley face on it.
I
Um,
love it.
I
I
fucking
love
hate
it.
it. I fucking hate this thing. This
That's
is
the
the second.
trade-off for you getting literally the coolest cape they have ever made for a hunter ever.
We got a top 5 cape. We got the best chest piece they've ever made by far.
Yep.
Um, and then you realize that like the rest of the hunter armor just kind of like sucks ass. But everybody got like one or two best in class pieces. The Titan helmet is incredible.
Yep.
Uh, I
Same for the Fluver helmet. The Warlock
I
helmet's pretty
like I
cool.
like the Warlock helmet. If we had to sacrifice our helmets for y'all, then I'm okay with that. The Warlock class item is really good too. I really like that. Um, but these weapons, I cannot get over the fact that I like that they give you his glaive as a legendary, and it can only drop. That's the only weapon that can only drop from one encounter, besides the exotic, obviously. That can only drop from the final boss. It can only drop from him. Lubar's Ruin. And I cannot get over the fact that this is not an exotic weapon.
I know. My mind is blown.
I
As
literally cannot grasp how this is not an exotic weapon. And we got not one, not two, but we got three shit ass exotic glaives.
and then you have this glaive that homeboy used to literally slaughter like untold trillions of
Trillions. His
civilizations.
entire planet. On top of that, he has slayed dozens, if not hundreds, of civilizations. He has helped manipulate the Krill into becoming the Hive. He was
Yeah.
part of the corruption of Sathona in the Savathun.
He
He
made the hive what they are.
he
You
used
know,
the rib of a leviathan to beat the worm god in the pyramid into submission. He uses it as a billy club.
he's
Like
killed a traveler.
he has killed a traveler. This guy is terrifying, and yet
He's a
his
Giga Chad.
Lubar's ruin is a legendary solar glaive. I cannot get over this.
It just God. And we'll
It's
get to the
not
raid exotic.
even heavy.
We'll get to the raid exotic in a second,
Yeah,
but
I want to go through the legendary
it
suite first, but I can't get over that. This is like
yeah.
maybe one of my only criticisms of the entire raid is, don't get me wrong, the raid
Th-
exotic is really cool. I think it probably should have been the
no, it's a super unique thing. It should have had something to do with Void 3.0.
yeah.
This should have been something like
Yep.
Korra had a mission for,
Yep.
right?
Yep. I think honestly, I think this should have been the investigation weapon that we got instead of the
Yeah,
exotic glaives. I
yeah.
understand why they did the glaives for each class. Totally get it, totally understand.
Totally
But
cool idea. If they ever buff them in the future, they'll be really cool.
I
But yeah, they
cannot
landed
fucking
super flat.
believe that this is not an exotic. Like my mind is just
Yep.
utterly and completely I honestly, what I think this should have been is this should have been a quest exotic like Divinity.
Yeah.
Um, especially with how heavy they're pushing the glaives. Like I think it's cool that it's still craftable. You can get 5 patterns. You
Yeah.
can craft your own. There's some really good perk combinations on all of these guns, and we're gonna go through them here in just a second. But this is the coolest looking weapon I think in the entire expansion. That's legendary and exotics combined. I think this is the coolest looking one.
I can tell you it looks great in the hands.
I know. I've gotten the pictures from everybody. For reference, my entire first run, including the attempts on contest and our subsequent finishing, did not net me a single weapon, and I was very upset about it. I was very bent out of shape. And now I've received like 6 of the pulse rifle, and I'm getting tired of seeing it. So let's go into these. So we've already talked about the legendary glaive submission, the SMG. Um, automatically, I think that we're gonna say this about a couple of weapons in here. Automatically comes in as a best in class. Like
Yeah.
I think Shayura's and Funnel Web are about the only two that are better than this,
But
or on
in the
par with it.
kinetic slot, in the kinetic slot, you really only have Multi-Mock, and even then, Multi-Mock doesn't have that many good PvE rolls.
Multi-mock, you had to get the absolute perfect god roll on it for it
Yeah.
to be viable. I think like it was still viable, but I mean, Shayura's was
Yeah.
just Shayura's has dominated PvP since it was introduced about a year ago, and Funnel Web obviously is taking the world by storm right now. Ikelos SMG has kind of come back into play with some people. I personally never took it out of my inventory. I really like using it a lot. This is, in my opinion, it's the top kinetic SMG in the game.
It looks amazing. It has
It's a
really
900
good,
RPM.
yeah, 900 RPM, lightweight, and the lightweights make a lot of difference, especially in the Crucible. Getting that extra
Oh
strength
yeah,
speed is nice just for having a weapon out, right?
I so some of the perks that you can get on this gun. In the first column, you can get subsistence, steady hands, perpetual motion. In perk row 2, you can get frenzy, thresh, and swashbuckler. Demolitionist can also roll in that. Like just almost every combination of perks on this weapon is good. Like The only time I think I'd ever be disappointed is if I got like fucking Encore and Harmony.
Yeah, or like bait and switch. I think bait and
Oh,
switch is good on
Encore
certain
Bait and
weapons.
Switch is probably the worst roll on this gun, frankly.
Yeah.
Maybe,
I'll be honest, I
maybe
have one with
tournament.
Encore. I
Maybe
have one with
tournament.
Encore. It's actually pretty fun because you're
It's
just constantly boosting ranger stability,
yeah.
right? It's a little harder to control on an SM. It's at least
I,
fun.
I
I
think
don't
I
know.
think
It,
Encore. So like I definitely share your epiphany about Encore. I like it better on like a pulse.
mm,
Something I can kind of like control just a little bit better. I like
yeah,
Encore. I like pairing it with something like a rapid hit or a thresh or something like that. Uh, and then you get the origin trait on all these guns. By the way, you probably should start with this of Soul Drinker.
yeah. Soul Drinker,
This I think is automatically the best origin trait of any of them. I think
as it should be, coming from the raid.
to me, only Land Tank competes. And Land Tank, I think it's okay to compete with a raid style one because those are available to everybody, but they're only going to be on this season's weapons. Those will, unless they bring back and do another Cabal season next year, highly likely since we've gotten two years in a row now. Um,
Yeah,
that's only going to be on those six weapons. For right now, how crafting exists, it will only be on those six weapons. I think that's okay.
yeah.
Um, but you get Soul Drinker. John, why don't you tell us exactly what Soul Drinker is and why it's so good?
Okay, and why I think it's especially good on this SMG out
Mm-hmm.
of the whole bunch. Soul Drinker is you gain health based on the number of hits before reloading, and on a 900 RPM SMG that can roll subsistence, you know, you can almost kind of time to reload when you're in the red, just to get you out of that trouble. I mean, it's not a crazy. You're not going to
Yeah.
reload and go to full health, but it all helps, especially in high end content or even PvP. Think about that: winning a 2v1 and then
Oh yeah.
reloading, being ready to go into the next
Well,
one.
so
You know,
I'm ready to talk about my experience with this perk when we get down to the pulse. Um,
okay.
but yeah, origin traits. I mean, listen, if we're gonna get shit like this, I'm okay with giving up the guns creating orbs
Oh,
intrinsically. Totally okay
oh
with it.
yeah,
Totally okay with it. I did not notice it in the raid because there were so many, and I mean, part of it is that exotics have it built in now, but just constantly there were orbs going, from supers being cast, and there's so many rally flags. Like I have yet to be in a situation like outside of some PvP matches where I'm like, God damn, I really wish I had my super. Like
yeah,
I haven't encountered that really in PvE content because I there's enough enemy density also that I'm just constantly building it. I've started using Thresh a lot more on my primaries as well to kind of compensate. Um, but this next weapon, and I think if they hadn't had a legendary glaive, I think this probably would have been your favorite weapon out of the raid.
oh
Deliverance,
yeah.
the primary stasis fusion rifle.
Oh baby.
I'm so happy that I got this to drop. Um, I got this to drop with steady hands and successful warm up.
Okay. Yeah, shout out to successful warm up just period because both on bows and fusions, it's a great perk. It feels
I
so
want to
good.
say that that's what. See, now I'm second guessing myself. I definitely had one of those, but I feel like I think it was successful hands. Like I've used it some. I just got this to drop the other night, so I haven't gotten a chance to play with it too much. Um, but it's unique. It's the first legendary primary fusion
Yep.
rifle that we've gotten. Which it God, it's awesome. I love this
Yeah.
thing.
Even if it was mediocre, the fact that it's an option for that kinetic slot goes a long way because either it's Bastion or
Oh,
nothing,
excuse me.
right? If you want to,
I did not get steady hands. I got sleight of hand successful warm up on this.
okay,
So
okay,
not as good. Not a huge fan of sleight of hand right now, just because of how much you have to do to proc it. Um, but overall, like I mean, God, successful warm up is one of my favorite new perks. We're gonna do a big weapons breakdown here in a few weeks. John's gonna come back for it, and that's probably my new favorite perk out of the ones in this expansion because on both a bow and on a fusion, that is such a good perk.
yep.
I love it. God, I cannot get over how good it is.
The fact that this thing rolls with chill clip is
Yeah. So Chill Clip's a little wild. Um, I like Chill Clip. And hang on, I'm trying. God, my computer just fucked up on me a little bit. Um, Chill Clip is direct hits with the top half of the magazine cause a detonation that slows nearby targets. Um, this thing in the Crucible is a monster. Chill clip on anything is a monster. I've been running it
and
on
that
a heavy grenades, believe it or not. I've been running it on there.
yeah.
Really enjoying it.
That's why I was so surprised to see it here because I'd only seen it on heavy weapons
Yeah,
before, and I'm like,
it
that's cool, but I'm using my heavy for
mhm.
DPS. I'm not really gonna.
It's
But yeah,
not.
having it here,
This isn't a weapon that for me is going to replace like if I'm going to run a fusion rifle, I'm probably not going to run this in too much PVE content. Frankly, I would still rather have Cartesian on me, or even Null Composure with Void 3.0. But this is very good for this for it being such a unique weapon. I think if you can get or craft the correct perks on this thing can be an absolute monster. I look forward to running this in a lot of PvP going forward, especially having successful warm up on it.
yeah,
I
that
want to
feels so
see
good.
what a monster this thing can actually be. Um, Cataclysmic is the linear fusion. John, have you gotten this one to drop?
I have,
Okay,
and I
okay.
got a pretty solid roll on it too.
Okay, hit me with that roll. What'd you get on this?
Okay, so I got fourth times the charm and focused fury.
Yeah, I would say that's like one of the god rolls.
Yep. Like this is yeah, because especially with fourth times the charm, once a really cool interaction with Focus Fury is if you have anything that can keep stocking up your magazine without manually reloading, you can
Hmm.
keep taking advantage of the perk. So like overflow or subsistence. So yeah, four times the charm with the Focus Fury on a solar when Solar 3.0 comes out, this is going to be even nuttier.
So,
But yeah,
some of the crazy perks that can roll on this. Fourth time's the charm and successful warm up and dragonfly can all roll in that first row. Okay,
yep.
and I think dragonfly. Okay, less enthusiastic about that being on a heavy personally.
Yeah.
But
But notably, it's on the left column, so you
yes.
have an option to take one of the damage dealers with it, right?
So I mean you probably want fourth if you're going to use this for boss DPS. You probably want fourth times or successful warm up here, and then you can get high impact reserves, box breathing, clown cartridge, or focused fury, or adaptive munitions on this. This is
Yep.
wild.
Even bait and switch. I mean, imagine spraying with your SMG,
That's
shooting one
true.
sniper round, and pulling this
That's
out. You
definitely
know?
true. It's probably the only weapon that I've seen bait and switch on that I would be like, yeah, I actually probably want that on there, or
Yeah,
I would at least
exactly. Right.
experiment with
Like
it.
on a primary, I'm not going to burn a heavy round to
No,
activate bait and switch, right?
no, not at all. But let's keep moving. We're gonna move on. My personal favorite weapon of the suite. Of course, it's a pulse rifle,
Of
Insidious.
course,
Uh,
it's so
450
good.
aggressive burst. Yes. I was soloing Legend Lost Sectors earlier today, pretty much exclusively with this and Galahorn. Um, this was absolutely just incredible. It was breaking the shields very quickly, and it was doming and downing those enemies. I ran this in trials over the weekend. I didn't have a lot of team success, but I had a lot of individual success. I was really enjoying running. I think I was finishing like with 13 kills a match when I did it. Really enjoyed using this. Um, I've gotten a few different roles on this. The one that I'm currently using is Rapid Hit Adrenaline Junkie.
That's not a
And
bad roll.
I'm really digging it. I would like to and I will say this, I would like to get this with one for all and stats for all. Just because I've become a one for all believer. I've been pushing this narrative for about a year now since I first got it on my messenger, and I will keep beating the drum that I think it's a very good perk if you can learn how to use it correctly. And
Yep.
for somebody who is usually on ad clear duty in harder content, it's perfect. It's always procced for me. Even in
And that,
Crucible, it's always procced.
yeah, I don't want to dip too much into what we're going to be talking about on the weapons pod, but
Yeah,
yeah, that and Frenzy are beautiful in their design in that I mean, if you think about it, Rampage only lasts for 3 seconds, Kill Clip lasts for 5 seconds, I think. One for All lasts for 10 seconds, 11 seconds. It's up there for a while. So for PvE, it's a really good choice.
yeah. I really enjoy this. Again, it's another one of those. You look at the perks you could roll with. In the first column, you can get compulsive reloader, you can get dragonfly, stats for all, rapid hit, heating up. I've also been using heating up rampage on mine. That's another role that I was playing with today.
Beautiful combo.
Beautiful combo. Second row can get adaptive munitions, which is great for a weapon like this.
Hmm.
One for all, Vorpal, Adrenaline Junkie, and Rampage. Yeah, I was just running through. When you get a line of thrall coming at you, having Soul Drinker when you're in the red, incredible, absolutely incredible.
Yep.
Um,
There's one thing I want to shout out to this weapon.
go.
Yeah, it's something we haven't seen since the Black Armory weapons. I think it was only the auto that could roll this, but the combination of Dragonfly and either Rampage, One for All, or Adrenaline Junkie, the explosion from Dragonfly, those kills proc your damage boost, right? So if
Yeah,
you blow up one thrall with Dragonfly, it blows up and kills 3 things. You're at max Rampage. You proc One for All. You get those stacks of Adrenaline Junkie. It's a beautiful combo that literally hasn't been in the game in 3.5 years. It's really good.
yeah. This is man, it's great. The final legendary that we have, and I'm gonna mainly let you speak to this one. I'm not a fan of breech loaded grenade launchers, as I've made known 1.5 million times on this show. Forbearance. It's a wave frame grenade launcher. I'm gonna let John talk about this one for a minute or two before he just goes absolutely nuts. But looking at the perk options here, knowing you can get ambitious with chain reaction, that's just, I mean, it's basically, what is it?
It's cooler salvage or salvo.
It's a cooler salvage or salvage. I mean, it's even arc on top of that. Like, I
Yeah,
would have preferred to have seen it do a different type of damage than salvagers personally. I think that's
but the
my
fact that
only
it's
major complaint here.
and that's fair, but this is also the first arc waveframe. Um, we haven't had one of those yet, and again, next season we'll get. I mean, I don't know if it's confirmed that we're getting arc next, but that's kind of what it sounds like based
Yeah,
on a couple tweets
sounds
I've
like to
seen
me.
from.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it'll be even spicier then. But Salvagers has its place. I love Salvagers. I think I have over 6,000 kills on mine. But the wave frame, this is the only one I haven't gotten my hands on yet. But seeing footage of it, it is so awesome to see that little streak go across the floor and cause all of that chain reaction in a way that Salvagers can't, because it'll touch. If there's a line of dudes running at you, it runs through all of them, and all of them explode with that chain reaction, and it covers such a bigger, almost in a hilariously bigger area than salvagers can. It's pretty insane.
yeah.
And also golden tricorn, that's a perk I didn't really care too much about when it came out in the 30th anniversary, but then now that I've gotten it on some void weapons with void 3.0 and how easy it is to get void kills, I'm going to say keep an eye on this perk,
This
especially
is
as
the
we.
time to go. As just a quick aside, this is the time to go get the legendary trace rifle from Dares of Eternity.
Hmm.
This is the time to go get one of those with golden tricorn and throw it in your vault.
Yep,
You
absolutely.
may think, Josh, you're crazy right now. Trust me, you're gonna want this when Solar 3.0 comes around to at least experiment with. I think. Um, we have one final weapon to talk about. We've already talked about Libre's Ruin. You guys can go look at those perks. I think a lot of us are still trying to figure out what perks are good on Glaives because it's such a different perk pool than Enigma.
Yeah,
So we're gonna skip to Collective Obligation, which has Umbral Sustenance and Void Leech. This is a 390 adaptive pulse, which, God, music to my ears. I love hearing
yep.
that. You guys have heard me speak for a long time about my love for Messenger. That is a 390. I use that in an awful lot of content. I use that. I used Blast Furnace for years before that. Used Go Figure before that. I've almost always had a Pulse that goes in my primary slot. Um, Umbral Sustenance. So the magazine is automatically reloaded when you gain Devour, Avoid Overshield, or become invisible. So, I mean, imagine that with how often hunters can go invisible now. And then Void Leech. Leeches void debuffs when damaging targets that are suppressed, weakened, or volatile. Once charged, swap firing. You can press whatever button it is to change your firing mode. So for like Xbox, it's long X. In this mode, damage from this weapon applies the same void debuffs that were leeched. This is going to be one that is going to be, I think, challenging to proc correctly. But when it is procced, this thing's going to be an absolute monster in PvE.
It it feels really good, and something about that reloading perk I want to point out with Devour, which all classes have access to now. It basically acts as super subsistence because
Mm-hmm.
with every kill you reproc Devour, so it reloads on every single kill if you have Devour up. Um, it's it's a lot of fun, and yeah, if you it's actually pretty easy to get all three of those debuffs on at once. You know, you throw a suppressive weakening grenade and then use a fragment that makes your grenades give you volatile rounds, and then boom, you have all three in the chamber, and then for 10 seconds that thing just shreds. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about this exotic? I know you've only had a very very limited window to play with this. Part of me wishes we were recording this tomorrow after you've had time to play with it more on your day off. But
My only concern is if there aren't pulse rifle mods in the artifact for champions, I don't see this being a pick. And it's
I
kind of
agree.
double sided. It's kind of double sided too because it's also kind of bad in more casual matchmade activities because everyone else is killing everything so fast that it's hard to get things on targets and then shoot it with this pulse to suck it into the pulse. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's I don't know. It is super cool. It is super unique. I had fun with it for a couple hours last night. If multiple people have it, it's kind of like Rat King or Outbreak, where it gets better because everyone is constantly applying those things, and you can
Yeah.
trade the buffs back and forth. But yeah, when we don't have Pulse artifact mods, I don't know how much use this is going to see. Sadly, it is really cool though.
For sure. So with all that in mind, John, we're gonna do one final thing here before we get out of here tonight. Um, and that is we're gonna rank this among the Destiny 2 raids. So as a reminder, the raids that we're going to be evaluating here in our rankings, we're not really going to give any reasonings. We'll give reasonings for like top three maybe, but Leviathan, Spire of Stars, Eater of Worlds, Last Wish, Garden of Salvation, Scourge of the Past, Crown of Sorrow, Deepstone Crypt, and Vow of the Disciples. That's 9 raids total, if my math is correct,
Jesus.
that we're going to evaluate. And that's with us omitting Vogue and the other 3 Destiny 1 raids. We are now up to 13 total raids, I believe, in the game.
Yep.
So John, let's go ahead. Let's start at the bottom. I've got Eater of Worlds down here as the bottom one.
Yeah,
I it's
the
pretty
final boss is
inarguable.
cool,
Yeah,
but where God, I don't even remember what are the rewards from those raids
the
from the two
Telesto
raid layers.
Catalyst.
Was that really it?
Yeah. I don't remember what else. This was one of those like I hadn't done it until the lead up to Beyond Light when we did all the raids that summer.
Yep.
That was I think I cleared it like twice and that was it because twice was enough for me. Um, number 8. I'm assuming you have the same number 9.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's fair. That's fair.
Number 8. I have a feeling we're gonna have the same number 8. Spyro Stars.
Fire stars. Yep.
And this is
It,
bad because I actually like Spire of Stars.
yeah, and to be honest, I kind of liked Eater Worlds too. It
Yeah,
just
yeah.
what
I think there's definitely something to
didn't.
like in both for sure.
Yeah, I mean the raid layer idea was interesting.
But
but
dungeons are
without
way
good
better.
rewards. Yeah, exactly. It would have been way cooler dungeons, and maybe with some unique loot.
Like,
I
I'd
think it
still
would have been
probably rank
okay.
both of these below any of the dungeons that we've gotten to. Like, that's the like maybe Pit of Heresies down here, but that's about it. Um, Number 7. This is where I think we're going to start to differ. Number 7, I have got Crown of Sorrow.
Oof,
Well, so I
oof. No,
John,
no love for the big chungus.
no love for the big chungus. I mean, you're not going to like my next one either. So, but
Oh, don't you do it? Don't you do my man like that?
I have Crown of Sorrow down here because it's yes, I think some of the ideas were cool here. It largely comes down to being like just two rooms with an in between jumping section that was just more annoying than anything.
Yeah,
Um, and
it was a raid we got in the season,
one of
right?
the rooms
You
was
know,
ripped directly from the menagerie. I might add, which doesn't help its case in my opinion for this ranking. Uh,
I would argue it was the other way around. I kind of feel like they built the raid and then used that space to make the menagerie.
it's entirely possible. John, what do
Yeah.
you got in this slot?
Oh God, I think honestly, I'm putting Garden down this low. I think I would put Garden.
Wow!
I think I would put Garden
Holy
below
shit!
Crown,
Okay, I did not expect that from you.
and I
Um,
like Garden, but
yeah. No, I get it. So the reason why I would put Garden this low, and I said this when we ranked it initially, is it's one of the most beautiful spaces they've ever created. It may be the best
mhm.
looking raid, but holy shit, the mechanic is so bad.
Yeah, the mechanics dumb.
It's
The
still
lore.
gimmicky. Like 3 years later, it's so bad.
Yep, and to touch on why I'm going to be ranking Vow as high as I will. Garden of Salvation had literally nothing to do with what was going on in
Well, and
Shadowkeep.
that's why
Yep.
that's part of why I've got some several of the raids I have as low as they are, because I don't mind when you tell a unique story within the raid, but I'd like it to pertain overall to the storyline that you're telling within the game at the same time,
Yep.
or within at least that expansion. So
Let
like
me ask you this: what's the Garden raid boss? What's his name? Don't you dare Google.
I couldn't fucking tell you because the only Minotaur I've ever
Exactly,
known
Big
is
Vex guy.
Zydron. Zydron's the only one I
Big.
know, and you want to know how I know that? Because they keep fucking bringing him back. He's Vex Tanix. I know him and I know Atheon. I don't know any of these other guys.
Yeah, yeah. We have this huge. The moon's haunted. All the shit's going
Yeah,
down. Oh fuck! There's a pyramid on the moon, and go fight a giant Vex guy. I
I
guess.
really can't believe that they didn't make a raid out of like Zulamok instead, and that
Hmm.
this was not the dungeon. It
Right.
absolutely blows my mind.
Someone trying to take the Taken King's throne wasn't the A plot, right? That was the B plot or the C plot.
Yeah, dude, it's literally such a throwaway that I have to explain it after I take people through. They're like, "So what was the point of that?" And I have to tell them, and they're like, "Huh, that would have been cool to have tied into the actual story of the expansion instead of
Yeah,
just
and
here's Hashla done, and by the way, you're gonna get talked to by a carbon copy of yourself, which is a whole lot cooler now in retrospect. Now that we've met the
yeah, we were
witness,
talking
but
about the
it
wetness. Yeah.
still doesn't make sense because if I'm my guardian, I'm still going." Man, those shrooms that Eris gave us were pretty fucking great.
And conversely, Garden would have made a pretty bitchin' dungeon.
I would admit a great one. I've wanted to get my Black Garden for so long, but it's still like in terms of like all the Destiny lore, that is still the thing that I'm like, guys, I think we just need to write this one off as a loss. I think it's
Yep.
done. I think we're done.
Outside of Divinity, all the weapons suck,
Which
right? Like,
it's so bad when the best thing inside. God, you've almost got me convinced to put it this low now. Um, I the Divinity puzzles is why I have it up as high as I will.
yeah,
I think that really saves it because I think they are so unique and they're frustrating, but they're so fun.
yeah.
I'm a sadistic fuck who really liked those puzzles.
No,
So
I did too.
let's
It's just a yeah. Let's move on.
yeah
Let's
let's move on. We could literally do an entire episode, I think, of breaking down the raids. I've got Leviathan above this. I've got Leviathan here at hang on, I'm having to do some math. At number 5, I think is where we are. I've got Leviathan at number 5. So yeah, but the bottom half of mine are basically all the Leviathan raids, and it's not because I think they're bad. It's Leviathan tried to do something truly unique for a Destiny raid, having a hub
Yeah.
area, which I still think is really unique, and I actually really like that. It's just it sucks.
Destiny has grown so much since then,
Yeah.
right?
That
Um,
that was the highlight of Vanilla Destiny 2, if that tells you anything.
yeah,
Not
and
really
the
a
I
high
think
point
the
to brag about.
no, but I will say at the very least, I don't know how much this counts for everyone, but in my book, the lore of the Leviathan and Callus and everything that's spewed from it was so
Oh,
important to
incredible,
Destiny for the
incredible.
next 3 years, right?
I mean, we're still seeing the effects of that, right? If these are tests for Callus to deem if we're worthy to be his shadow, which we now know basically Callus is just a fanboy of the Witness.
Yep,
So
that's where he got his notes.
he wants to be Rulk so badly, and he is like a peon compared to him. Um. So okay, what do you have in this slot then, John?
God.
Because I
Okay, so
figure for
what else?
you, it's got to be Leviathan or Scourge for you, right?
Yeah, I think I put Leviathan above Scourge. If for
Okay.
nothing else, then this is my VOG. This is my tinted glasses raid. This was
Hmm.
my first raid, right? Um, and you know how much I'm a simp for Callus and how much I love all that
For
lore.
sure, for sure.
So yeah, I think I would put Scourge beneath it. Scourge was fun, I guess, but talk about low stakes,
Um,
a mech suit.
so I feel kind of the opposite. I have Scourge
Okay.
above this because when we talk about, and I'm going to be really hypocritical in my next pick after this, but when we talk about stakes for a raid, this is the brother of or the brother of Spider is engineering this. The same one who engineered the
Yeah.
heist on the tower. We actually kill him there because canonically, Outbreak
Hmm.
Perfected takes place after this. He does that out of
Yeah.
desperation, and Mithrax. That's the first time we ever see Mithrax in game. He shows up with us to help kill him,
Yeah.
and this was him. Yes, the mech suit is really underwhelming, but I think the story behind it, he was basically trying to set off a nuke in the last city, is
Yeah.
actually fascinating. We're actually on the streets of the city for the
Yeah, that's
first
fair. It
encounter.
was cool.
I think the
It's got a
Sparrow
sparrow
race
race.
is simply one of the. It gave me like real Halo feels. I felt like I was back in the
Yeah.
Maw, or in Halo from Halo 3. That's what I felt like I was back in. I was just like waiting for the old Marty O'Donnell music to kick in.
Yeah.
Um, it was cool. I think that it's cool, but I definitely understand putting this below Leviathan. I think this was kind of like I also take into consideration the exotic you get out of this, which this was like the first time in D2 where it was like, oh my god, the exotic is like really good and it's actually really easy to farm for this some bitch as opposed to
Huh.
1K.
Oh, is the Scourge exotic any good? I didn't hear about that one.
Yeah, there's a reason why we used Anarchy for like 3 years, despite all the nerfs. It still gets the job done sometimes. Like, it's still a really fun weapon. The young ones will never know the pain of Josh's great Anarchy quest, where I did like
Okay, here
20 clears in a row trying to get it.
now that I'm thinking about it, I'll put my next three in this order. I'm gonna go Leviathan, Crown, Scourge. That's where I'm going up from Garden.
Okay, that's fair.
I totally get and agree with your grievances with Crown,
Yep.
but both from the lore and the weapons and everything
Yeah,
surrounding
I
Crown
just
of
think
Sorrow, I just
my
loved.
problem with Crown stems from I think everything once you get into Galran's throne room is just so bad. Like nothing about that is there are mechanics like in Vow of the Disciple where it's punishing, but it's still fun. This was
Yeah,
neither for me. Um
and that's fair. It was
yeah.
hard. I
It is
just
still one of those like when we were getting everybody through for their raid rings. I was like, man,
yeah.
this fucking sucks. Like the only reason I kept coming back was because I really wanted those damn hunter boots.
the Black Panther
I
claw boots.
finally got them on my last clear of it. I got that. I got Teraba, and I was like, "That's it. I'm never doing this ever again." I think we still had a homie who needed to do it, and I was like, "Nope, go LFG. I'm literally not touching this raid again." Whoever that is, I have a feeling it was Forrest, and I'm really sorry, Forrest, but fuck that. I'm not doing that. I'd done that raid like 5 times in a week. I was done. I was absolutely done doing that raid. Um, I think above this for me is, and this is, so I kind of forgot about a raid when I was ranking things, and but I'm okay. I'm rectifying it here. I've got Garden here. I've got Garden in the number 4 slot.
Okay.
Again, for all the reasons we said before, divinity, the puzzles, the design, I think the look of the weapons is really cool, and I think there are some good weapons in here. And it's the only time that I've ever felt like the raid mods were actually essential
Yeah.
and not just like fun little bonuses. Like the ones for Vow of the Disciple are just like, am I ever going to use these? No. Like maybe if you're the runner, or well, no, I guess you
It's free damage on the boss,
it's
but
free
yeah.
damage on the boss. I just,
It's
again,
free
like,
real estate.
I think they learned after Garden. One, when you have like every notable raider in your game saying, the mechanic is terrible, please never do this again, and also the
Yeah.
mods should not be required for a clear 2 years later. That's a
Yeah.
sign that you need to kind of fix things pretty drastically. And on top of that, like, I would argue, like, Divinity was an absolute must have until Void 3.0.
Yeah.
You had to have Divinity because it was so unique, it was so special. It was the first trace rifle where it was like, oh my god, this is actually like, oh my god, we need to be using this.
Yeah.
You only needed one per group, but god, I remember the early days where it used to stack with Tether, and
Yep.
how you would just annihilate. That was really the beginning of the end for Gambit. We had a great run. We had a good 12-month run with Gambit. But that's a topic for another day. I think you said you
You
had.
remember I didn't take that off the entire year of Shadowkeep.
You did not. You were the only one who had it.
Yep.
Out of any of us, and then I managed to get it towards the end of Shadowkeep, and ever since then I've been the Divinity bitch. Um, so we've kind of arrived at our top three. I think we both have the same number 3. I'm like 99% certain we do. And mine is Deepstone Crypt.
Okay. Yep. Okay. I was waiting with bated breath. I'm like, is this motherfucker really going to put Last Wish below Deepstone?
No,
Okay.
no,
Yep.
no, no,
All
definitely
right.
not. Deepstone was the one that I like. I know I said it, and then I forgot. I promptly forgot about it. Um,
Yep.
I don't know. Like, I mean, like, I'm sure my opinions will change again in the future. I have Deepstone here because I think Deepstone is the perfect beginner raid. This is
Yeah.
for all the gripes that people had about it's too easy. You needed something that was accessible, I think, and I think both
Yeah.
the combination of having
And that's
this,
what was cool about Scourge, right? It was
right.
also like that.
It
You
was
know,
very
it
beginner
was
friendly.
fun. It was short. Yeah.
They both have obnoxious sparrow parts in them that you cannot choose at all. Um,
Anymore.
yeah, anymore. I'm really glad we got the sparrow when we did because I would not be doing it now. Anybody who comes after who raids with me, I'm sorry, I'm never getting you the sparrow. Um,
You won't ever use that sparrow anyways. Just
nope,
forget about it.
nope. It's cool. We all used it. I still equip it when I go into Deepstone, just for. I have that in my
Hell yeah.
ghost that I equip because for old time's sake, I would.
I would skip all the bullshit. I think
Yeah.
Deepstone needs to be number 3 just for the spacewalk alone.
The spacewalk with
The lullaby, what's it called?
Deepstone Lullaby is the
Yep.
single best piece of music Destiny's ever produced, and I
Yep.
love that it's part of the in orbit rotation now and part of the tower
Yep.
rotation for music. Um, I've seldom had a track where I've thought that's not instantly iconic. Like everybody knows the Hyrule Field theme for Zelda. Everybody knows the Super Mario Brothers theme.
Yeah.
This is that theme for me for Destiny now. This is whenever I hear this, I hear those piano notes and I just instantly know the rest of the song. If the strings are going to come in, it's
Yep.
beautiful. The spacewalk alone, and like how the audio design changes when you're out there too, when you're firing your guns, is so
You'd hear the
unique.
muffled blasts of Shanks off in the distance. Yep.
How the jumping works out there, God, dude, it's so good. It's almost obnoxiously good. Like, forget about the memes of Taniks and everything. I think this is actually great.
Yeah,
I still think that we probably should Atrax probably should have been the final boss ultimately because they were Aramis's lieutenant, but
and it was a goddamn
them
exo
resurrecting
elixir.
Taniks, them resurrecting Taniks because Taniks and Aramis were basically hooking up is pretty great. As like just a subplot to all of this, like he'd always been impressed by Aramis, and you're like, oh, Aramis recovered his body and had it in cryo and was gonna like put Clovis Bray's exotech onto him, like
But nope, no time. Strap him to 4 giant shanks.
strap
Hell
him to
yeah.
4 giant shanks. Make him look like a literal dumpster fire. Make so I'm convinced somebody knew this was going to be a meme and just made it happen. It's great. So we have this now. The only question is, I want you to answer. What is your number two, John?
It's gonna be Last Wish.
Okay, same. So we're on the same page here. Last Wish. What can possibly be said about Last Wish that we haven't said before on this pod? Right.
Yeah.
Riven is still the most unexpected final not the most unexpected, but I think the most shocking final boss. Like, you don't really understand, like, you've only heard about the Ahamkara and Legends, but seeing one face
Yep.
to face was another experience entirely. When you're going down the elevators and you're seeing Riven and you're like, oh my god.
I
This is
realized that
wild.
when God, Josh, I think it was a couple. It was before Witch Queen came out, we were raiding with someone, and they said, "Hey, let's go do a Riven run real quick just to try to get 1,000 voices." And it wasn't until we got in there and I realized that Phil had never seen Riven before.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
all trying to figure out where the stupid corner is, and Phil's over there, but experiencing it for the first time. I'm like, guys, this is kind of fucking crazy. Looking at a giant space dragon. Yeah, that was it's a special raid.
It's
Um,
a really
and
special raid. It's probably I would say until Vow of the Disciple, it's the most important raid outside of the Taken King for the lore of the series.
yep, absolutely.
Um, it's
They had the
really
balls to throw in an encounter after the raid, and a
well. So
hard one at that.
that's the wildest part. I think right is you clear the boss and you think it's over, and then everyone was like, "Oh no." And you realize you have to run the heart of Riven in the world's most demented relay race. And when we cleared it, my only clear on that raid, I was the last person alive because I was the last person chosen, and I had no
Ah,
idea where to
beautiful.
go. I had our Sherpa was like could not have been more than 13 years old. I swear to God, this kid's balls hadn't dropped yet, and in this high pitched voice screaming, I'm watching you. I'm watching you. Go left. Go left. Go right now. Oh my god. Jump. Jump. Oh my god. You're almost at the end. And it is like the worst experience of my life raiding, having a squeaker yell at me. But goddamn, if that squeaker did not pull their weight and actually teach us the raid, had the fucking Ribbonsbane title and everything, and was just doing
Hell yeah.
Sherpas and LFG, and I'm like, don't you have anything better? Do you like trash? This kid had joined with them or pulled them in, and then they kicked that person and was like, I hate that kid. And like, oh my god, like this is savage. There's gonna be a fist fight in first period. Um, but Last Wish is great for all the reasons that we've described. Like it is for me, it's got it all. It's got a great jumping section. It's got great encounters. It's got great DPS checks. You're jumping between the ascendant plane and the material plane. I would say my only complaint about it is it's so fucking long.
It is a chonky raid.
It is one that I would be okay with never clearing ever again. Like, honestly, I'm so happy for how the chests dropped the loot there. That's why they changed the chest system, was because you could just go and take the wish wall to the free chest every week, and you could just get stuff to drop from it. I had the entire raid suite before I'd ever even beaten Riven because of that. I had all the armor already.
Oh wow.
It was pretty. Yeah, it's pretty wild. So uh, I don't know, but because it's so long, that's part of why I got to ding it. Number one, we're just gonna cut to the chase. It's the reason that we're here tonight. It's the raid we've talked about. We talked about for about an hour before this final segment. Vow of the Disciple. This is Bungie at their peak. Um,
Bungo, you did it.
Part of this may be recency bias. We've cleared it twice in 10 days. I plan on clearing this a lot more, partially because of the weapons, partially because I just love this raid so much. It's not one that I'm keen to teach too much, because I do think that this is one like I can see myself getting way too many migraines from trying to teach this, especially the third and fourth encounters. But man, it's just if you get a team that can flow together, this is such a rewarding raid. The lore behind this is the best that we've gotten in a raid since the Books of Sorrow, but even those largely were found in the campaign.
This, yeah, the implications of this raid in tandem with the Witch Queen just like completely changes the history of the entire Destiny universe.
This changes what you
It can't be
expect from a raid,
understated.
because when the whole time that you're going through this, when Rolk is talking to you, you think this is a Scorn that's talking to me. Like what is a
Yep.
Scorn
There's going to
doing
be a
here?
big Scorn that's
Yep,
got the darkness. He's got a
yep.
hive worm or something.
And then you get there to the end, and our reactions. I really wish we had been able to record them and that we hadn't had anything spoiled for us. Of course, by now we're clearing it after almost 48 hours have passed, or more than
Yeah,
48 hours
we've
have
seen the
passed.
boss.
We've seen the boss, but still seeing him in person. The first time that I got kicked, I'll never forget that. The first time I got kicked and everybody's reaction. We all just busted out laughing. It ended up being a wipe because we were laughing so hard. Um, Everything about this raid though really hits. Like I said it earlier, I feel like every raid has a jumping section, and that's like one of the criteria that I judge you on is how good is your jumping puzzle. And this is one that does not feel super punishing, but like you can fuck up so easily on it. I think the toggle, so having to send one person ahead, there's a lot of pressure on your hunter in your raiding party, I think. I now have to keep stompies in my inventory purely for this raid. But it's great. I really think it all just comes together. It's the most fluid raid, and man, Last Wish, I think is still more unique in some ways. But holy shit, the length of Last Wish really kills it. That and the length of that and of Garden, frankly, just kill them for me. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that raids should be short, like, oh, you can pound it out in 45 minutes if you know what you're doing, like, but man, you combine that with that, and I think that this is probably. I mean, and I say probably because I think Deepstone had a really good weapons pool, for the most part. But even then, like you think about Deepstone, and like you think about most raids, you have like two, maybe three weapons that are like good with the perk pools, and then the rest are just
Yeah.
kind of like,
And it's
eh.
all up to you. Like, do you like hand cannons? You might want the deep stone hand cannon. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
it's it's
It's all definitely
so on.
subjective, but I feel like there's only like usually two, maybe three definitively good weapons in a raid. This is the first raid where I think I've looked at it and I'm like, I think every single weapon is awesome.
Yeah.
Like you can get a killer roll on every one of these weapons. And I'm not saying like, oh, you can use them in every single activity. Like some are definitely activity based, but man, there's more freedom than ever before. You can craft your own roles in this, and I think that's part of why I'm bumping this up too. Is this is the first craftable raid? I'm not saying I
Yeah.
want them to go back and like waste resources on making like the deep stone weapons craftable and the Vogue weapons, although I'm sure that probably will happen down the road. Like just retroactively give us the prints, the blueprints if we earn
Yeah.
the weapon, which means I'll still be on my hunt for the deep stone LMG. After 23 clears, I still don't have it. Um, I just think everything about this
Hey
raid.
Josh, it's Void. It's pretty good with Void 3.0.
I
Just gonna
know,
throw
shut
that
the
out there.
fuck up. I think everything about this raid, though, just it's best or it's almost best in class for every single aspect of it. It's challenging, but it's not punishing. And it's one of those like I know some people are going to listen to this and be like, "You really think that's challenging?" Like, yeah, I do think it's challenging at first, and like I totally agree. Like it was night and day. Me and John and Phil were saying this when we went in for our second clear this week. Like, man, it is so much easier going in not on contest mode. Like we were just breezing through those first two encounters. Like the rest of our
Yeah.
team was kind of like, oh, I don't know, it's
And
getting
I
kind of
don't
crazy. And I'm like, nope, this is so
it,
laid back.
And I don't think that's a bad thing
No,
either.
no.
Like, you want the difficulty there for contest, you want the difficulty in the learning, but once you know the raid in my mind is supposed to be a fun thing you can get your group of friends to do, to group
I
together
mean, and
and
let's be real, like, no matter how good you get at that third encounter, that's still gonna throw you for a trip.
yeah.
I
But I
think
don't want this to be like World of Warcraft
no,
raids where
no.
it's gonna take us literally 4 days of straight playing to get to the boss, right? Like,
No,
that's
but I think this is one of those raids where you can definitely feel WoW's influence on it. We've even had friends who have said, like for example, Nerd Generalist plays a lot of ESO, and he's like,
mhm.
man, the raids here compared to ESO, there's no comparison. Like ESOs are just a joke. He's like, people will be like, oh, this is challenging, and he's like, damn, it's just like literally kill a boss. Like there's no mechanics or puzzles or anything. Like Destiny is still one of a kind in terms of how it handles raids. It really is a light MMO. Like I would eventually love to see a larger raid, like maybe the one where we fight the
Yeah.
witness is larger, but man, just doing callouts and developing callouts for 6 people is enough. Um,
Yeah.
it makes me really excited to see what they do with the rest of what they do with the 2 new dungeons this year. After the mechanics that they did here, that they introduced in Grasp of Avarice and Prophecy, like each of these
And
things has
can
had a
we
distinct feel.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about how cool it is. We think that Giga Chad Rolk will walk up and kick you in the next Tuesday, but I just want to point out how much I appreciate a boss fight that isn't just satisfy a mechanic, pop well, dump all your heavy at a
And
big
that's
thing.
the thing, like, and I think our warlocks were relieved that they didn't have to run Well of Radiance.
Hmm.
And I totally agree with that. Like, it was so refreshing hearing that that was not going to be a viable strat for anybody. And it was just like, okay, well, then, I mean, obviously at that point, you only have one other option. If you're a warlock, you have to go to Nova Bomb. But I could see a future with maybe Arc 3.0 where Chaos Reach could be viable here. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, Golden Gun, of course, for hunters could be, even though Rolk dashes at you pretty quickly, you'd have to pop it right away. Um, if Galnor gets fixed, that could be one. Um, but I can't see anything beating Tether ever. Even when you have multiple ones firing, just that impact damage alone is so worth it. It's wild. I think this raid is great from top to bottom, and the fact that this is the last Lubarian. He's the last of
Yeah.
his species, so they introduce a new species and we make them extinct in the same encounter. That's pretty
You thought
wild.
you were getting a new race? Think again, suckers.
Pretty much. So I actually saw somebody complaining about this earlier, like, "Oh my god, they finally introduced a new race and they just killed them off. Like this universe could be so much better if you just had all these different kinds of aliens and this and that." And I'm like, "There's memory limitations, guys. Like, you have to remember that the base things they're still developing for are the base PS4 and base Xbox One consoles. Like, because this stuff still has to run there. You have to remember this game still runs in 30 frames on those consoles.
Yep.
Like, the
And until the past 2 years, the Destiny story has been so convoluted enough with
yeah,
4 enemy races, you know?
well, 4 enemy races, and then you got the subsection of those. You had the Siva Splicers,
It's
you had the Scorn, you had the Taken.
yeah.
You've got different factions of the. Oh, we got the House of Light now. We've got which we already knew about in the lore, but now it's officially in the game. You've got like 5 different kinds of Vex, believe it or not. You've got 2 different factions of Cabal, maybe a third. It's
So in the dark
absolutely
period
crazy,
of D2 vanilla to Forsaken, it would have made things more confusing and less satisfying to just introduce a whole new enemy race and not
right?
resolve any of all of that,
I mean, and
right?
I've been, and I don't want to divulge this. I want us to wrap up. I've been really clear
Yeah,
about how
yeah,
I think that we're going to get another enemy race, another full time one that we'll deal with in the final 2 expansions. I still think the Veil is a real thing, but at this point, I'm totally cool if it's not. Like, I'm
yeah,
totally okay with it because I think we're wrapping up the existing storylines of not just our Guardian and of the current Light and Dark saga, but of these races also, and like we can set
yeah.
them out on new stories after this as the Elixni and the Cabal have really become allies now. Hilariously, the Cabal are our allies. At least a faction of them
Yeah.
are. And you look ahead, it makes me so excited for the dungeons because the dungeons almost certainly now will have different disciples as the bosses. Like we talk
So
about
Callus is a disciple, right?
I would almost guarantee that Callus will be a dungeon boss before Christmas of this year. He will be in one of the two dungeons.
Mm,
I mean, they if
mm,
you've been playing the Vox Obscura missions, which I want to circle around to the exotic missions later on. We've already discussed the ones here, but I want to do a ranking of those on a
yeah.
rainy day. The different lore that you get each week from that and that you were getting from the Glycon, Callus is very clearly being set up for a return.
I didn't
And
know there was lore in the Vox Obscura Monoma or whatever it's called.
it's not really lore; it's the spoken dialogue at the end. That
Okay.
titles visions that she's getting from the Scions, and there is new dialogue when you do it on Master also.
God damn
So
it. All
I,
right.
I will definitely say that I think that combined with seasonal storylines, Kalos is probably ripe for a return. We know Mara has seen a future in which she becomes one. I don't want it to just become like, oh, we're killing NPCs that we've heard of before. I think this is an opportunity to introduce other races, but
Yeah.
also like there's nothing that says like, okay, so Rule says he killed this entire race, but you know, what if like even like one or two, younglings, the younglings
Eh.
survived, and it's been like
Technically, all he did was blow up a sun. He didn't like 100%. You know what I mean?
it's
Like, there's
been
there's
like
definitely a story to write.
35,000 years. Like, it's
Yeah.
definitely reasonable that that population rebuilt itself. Like, who's to say that we won't encounter the Lubarians in a theoretical expansion or in a Destiny 3? Like, we know that
Yeah.
they're already planting seeds for the future, and I think that that's what makes me so excited. Is that's the other reason why this raid has to be up there. Like, Last Wish ranks that high because that was like the completion of the promise that Forsaken was going to fix everything. And that was like the
Yeah.
first one where we were like, oh my god, like this is on the level of the D1 raids. This is on the level of Vogue and Vogue, I almost said Last Wish, Kingsfall and Wrath of the Machine. Like, oh, you got this. Garden, I think in a lot of ways, we were like, okay, that's kind of helping pick up the torch, like in terms of design and encounters, but man, the mechanic sucks. This is the
And we
one.
all know that everything in Shadowkeep was basically a leap year for Destiny, right? That was
I mean,
a, hey, we're
they
turning the
half-assed a
ship
lot of it.
around. Yep.
Like, and we know why, but I think when you consider what this means, and I mean, of course, things that come after these raids can and should affect where we rank these at, right? Um,
Yeah.
and of course, you're always going to have those memories. You're always going to memory of your first clear and things like that. Like, I love the little intro cinematic that you can watch if you ever cleared things in D1, and it'll say who you cleared things with. And Bungie started sending out those emails again now with like raids, like here's who you cleared each raid with for the first time. It's like, oh my
Yep.
god, like that makes me remember like, oh my god, like I looked at my D1 runs the other night after getting that email, and I was like, wow, because you can still view that cinematic in Destiny 2.
Hmm.
And I was like, man, I haven't talked to some of these people, and it's the only person I still play with from those D1 encounters and storylines and stuff is my buddy Matt. Like, we're the only two who
Yep.
still play Destiny out of that crew. And I think when you think about that and you think about Disciple, like if Last Wish was the beginning of the redemption arc, this is the completion. This is the completion of the redemption of the Destiny franchise. I think like the raids have always, like we said, the raids have always been varying degrees of good to great, if not like outright incredible. But then you have like those 2 or 3 S tier raids that really go above and beyond, and that's what you've got here. So, John, any final thoughts on Vow of the Disciple before we close out an episode that I did not intend to go this long, but I'm glad that it did.
No, I'm just more excited forever, more excited than ever. You're always hearing that Destiny is in its biggest, the greater things ahead. But I really do believe that the next 2 years are going to be pretty wild for Destiny. If this is any indication, this is going to be our Infinity War Endgame saga. You know.
Yeah, I fully agree. Like, we know Joe Blackburn was talking about the state of the game last year, last February, and saying, we've always said that we felt Destiny's best days are ahead of us. We still believe that that's true. And then when we got the Witch Queen reveal, him and Justin Truman, I think, said it best. We've always said that Destiny's best days are ahead of us. This and that. We feel like we're here. We feel like we're there with the Witch Queen. And man, I think they delivered on it in every aspect. And the
Yep.
Vow of the Disciple is really the thing that I think lifts an already amazing story. It's easily the best campaign that's happened. It's the best overall expansion. This makes it the best overall expansion,
Oh
though.
yeah.
Like,
That was my only worry going in
yeah,
after I realized, okay, this campaign is awesome. These new weapons are awesome. I have some grievances with crafting, but Void 3.0, and I was weighing
yeah,
all it out. And I'm like, man, if the raid sucks, it's really gonna deflate this balloon, right? Like, and they nailed it. It's an amazing raid.
They nailed it. It's an amazing raid. I can't wait for Corey to clear this and get his feedback on it and see his reactions. But with that, we are going to get on out of here. John, thank you for joining us. Um, Everybody, as a reminder, we will have a normal episode for you on Friday morning. Corey and I are still going to record on Thursdays, on Thursday of this week, and then we are taking a break next week, a much needed break. Post Witch Queen hype train. This Thursday's episode will probably be a little bit low key. We may actually do the exotic mission ranking this week if the TWAB is really as light as they're saying. And I want to kind of dive into a little bit more of Vox Obscura discussions, having experienced the master side of it today. And then, we're taking a break next week. I'll be out of town. I'll actually be out of the country for about 4 days, going to a wedding in the Bahamas, and then taking a vacation with my girlfriend's going with me. Obviously, it's her friend who's getting married, but afterwards, taking a couple days just for ourselves and going to Disney since we've already been out in Florida. We will be back with more Tower Casuals on the 31st of this month. Really, the 1st of April is when the episode will post. John will be with us for that one. We may have Nerd Generalist joining us for a big
That guy.
that guy. He's been itching. He's been itching to come back and talk some Destiny with us and make his return to the show. Have him come back, and we are going to do a big weapons blowout. We're each going to bring some of our favorite weapons from the expansion. Corey and I think will handle the seasonal ones. We're going to bring our favorite ones from the expansion, the whirlpool, the raid, etc. What are our favorite roles? We're going to have a really frank discussion on crafting. It's going to be a great episode. I'm really looking forward
I'm
to
ready.
it. I'm ready. John, thank you once again for joining us.
Of course.
Especially at the last minute. I know it got a little hectic there, and you kind of sprinted home from work to do it. But I appreciate you jumping in. I know Corey does too. And Guardians, we will see you again on Friday morning when the next episode posts. Good night.